Hi, friends, and welcome to the Out of OCD podcast, your source for understanding and managing obsessive compulsive disorder. This podcast explores the realities of OCD, personal stories, treatment approaches, and tips for breaking free from those often debilitating intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. I'm your host, Dr. Toy Hirschman, not a therapist, but someone who has also lived with severe OCD and co-occurring disorders. Please join me for real stories, pro tips, and a sometimes humorous look at busting through OCD. Let's get started kicking OCD out of our lives for good. Hi, friends. Toy here. This is the very first episode of the Out of OCD podcast. And if I like the video of this, I might use it on the YouTube channel as well. So I thought it would be a great idea to start this podcast off with a very dear friend of mine, Maria Claire Andrea, who also has her own journey with, I'll let her talk about her bipolar, but also, just in general, the anxiety and some of the things that come up with OCD also come up in her life. And I thought it would be a great way to kick this off. And so, from time to time, if we have guests, that's cool. But this is going to be a lot of fun. And fun, but not so fun fact. There are tons of folks out there who have OCD and have co-occurring disorders. And although she and I do not share our disorders, but there are many folks out there that also have bipolar with OCD, which I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. So we can talk a little bit about that later. So welcome, Maria Claire. I'm so excited to share this with you. And I'm also nervous about it because I've not done a podcast for my mental illness before.
Well, and I'm just so thankful to be here. I know we've talked about doing this and we're finally doing it. Toy, I love the fact that you published your book Out of OCD. We both met each other because we were in a book writing class where Toy decided to write about OCD and I decided to write about bipolar. The name of my book is called The Edge of the Roller Coaster. Toy's book is out. My book is still in production. Currently, I'm publishing it as a memoir, and I just had a Kickstarter campaign, and we just successfully raised our funding. So the campaign ends in like a couple hours. So by the time everybody hears this podcast, the campaign might be over, but it's been a journey for sure.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. So Maria Claire was at my house a few weeks ago, like in the middle of the campaign. And I'm not going to lie, she was a little bit nervous about the campaign. And so for all of you who supported her, just big thanks, because this is great. She's doing something really creative. So as she mentioned, we both were in a really interesting writing group together. Maybe we'll talk about that another time. But we met because we were both writing books about mental health. And then so after we would meet on Zoom and write, she and I and a few other folks, and it was just basically three of us would meet afterwards and just kind of debrief and talk about our lives. And so it was a lot of fun. And then, Maria Claire doesn't live that far from me. So as it turns out, we were able to visit. But I published the book and then she decided to do something really unique. And she's releasing the audiobook first. So it's called The Edge of the Roller Coaster, and we'll keep you informed when that drops, because I guess that's how you say it, right? When you audiobook. I'm old, guys. I'm old. So that's really interesting. And then hopefully, because you have written the book, that later you'll publish it as a book. And so because I know I have a feeling from the pieces that I've listened to that this is going to be the kind of audiobook that I love, where I will listen to the audiobook first because I'm an audiobook person, but then I'm like, oh, I have so much I want to highlight and write in that book. So then you buy the book. So.
I'm a highlighter and writer too in a book. When I get a book, I have to destroy it. I have to dog market?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, and then also, you're talking about you had mentioned anxiety earlier. I think we both had a lot of anxiety while we were in the book writing class. And I think just for the two of us to connect and keep each other accountable, it really helped us both like get to reach the goals that we wanted to. And then just with this campaign, yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. It's been exciting. It's been nerve-wracking. As soon as I first went on live, I froze in front of the computer because I just literally didn't know what to say on a Facebook Live. And then I published it. So my first Facebook Live is just me very awkwardly staring at the computer, and people were like, "Is that it? Is she about to say something?" And it's like, nope, I didn't say anything that entire time. And then I realized, oh, maybe I want to talk to people. So I invited my friends to join the live, and Toy got on one of the lives, and it was really nice. And I think just for me personally, because like I am like an extrovert, like I have to do things in community and with community. So part of helping my anxiety was to go on the live with you. And it was just so much fun, so much better, as opposed to like talking in the ether and just or talking by myself. So and then the more I talked about it, the more confident I became. And it's like interesting to like watch the progression of the videos. And it's like now when you see like some of the last videos, I'm like super confident with my fiance in a garden. But yeah, the first couple of videos are quite awkward. I literally, if you watch the videos closely, and you can find them on like my Facebook account or on like Edge of the Roller Coaster on Instagram, a lot of times I'm actually coughing in the videos, and that's part of my anxiety. Was I was like I like was I could feel it like within my throat. And so even if I'm like happy, like if you watch the videos closely, like there's a lot of coughing, and it wasn't because I was sick. It was because of the anxiety. So
Yeah, you're a nervous cougher. I'm a nervous laugher, as you'll find. So speaking of being nervous, this whole thing, you know, when you write a memoir about your mental health journey, it's a little bit raw, and it's not a little bit raw, it's a lot of it raw. And for me and you also, because we're professional women and we're working in high level careers where I didn't share my stuff with the people I worked with. And so publishing that book was huge, just personal experience. And now even doing this, I mean, I have a board of directors and they might, you know, and I have to be okay with them seeing this. And I totally am, but it took me a long time to get there. So I wonder if you had the same experience, and to talk about that, because even if you're not publishing a book, just if you're just out there and you're dealing with mental illness, it is such a shame building place, because you don't want people to see it and you don't know what kind of reactions that they're going to have. So just sharing it is super hard. So how did you deal with that?
yeah, 100%. And I also think like everybody's experience is completely different. So I know a little bit about your experience, Toy, because I did read, you know, in your book, for you, your awareness about mental illness, it started from the time in which you were young. However, for me, I had a mental health break only we're in 2014. So literally 5 years ago was the first time I was diagnosed. And so this whole world of labeling and medication and having to go to therapy, being put in a mental hospital is all new for me. Like, and I'm just like grappling with what is bipolar? Wait, like what is this? Is this me? Is this the bipolar? Is this my anxiety? Is this depression? Is this something else? Is this OCD? Like, I'm just trying to figure out like what is all of this? So I think it was like even harder to make it public because when I myself am just still figuring out like what is this? What do I have? And am I like Kanye West? Like, like I'm trying to figure out like what's going on. And then on top of that, I had a lot of issues with my family. I was going through legal court stuff. Um, and so for me, I decided in the midst of this storm, that's when I wanted to write. And there was so much I was going through. I was like, I need to make sense of all of this. I don't know how to express myself. And so I chose to write it out. And in writing it out, it was incredibly cathartic for me to just like put it out there for myself. Like I was just like, I just want a manuscript. I just want to write it all out. And then what was encouraging was talking with you, talking with our classmates, and you guys were like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. I'm like, oh, I think that was like the first like level of validation, because I wasn't waving around a flag telling everybody like, hey, I'm bipolar. There was only, I don't remember how it happened, but there was somebody in my workplace and she had mentioned, because she was very open and honest about being bipolar, and she didn't have a problem kind of like wearing it on her sleeve. um I was like, wow, you're so bold. Like yeah, like, and then I did open up to her, but I was like, I'm still coming to grips with it. And so it was really cool because she ended up giving me advice when I did have to go to prison, like what to wear. And I write about it in the book. I was like, it's like, what, Daria, what do I wear when I go to prison? um but her experience in Virginia was much different from my experience in Maryland, Montgomery County. And just having one person be able to share that with me, at least for me, I was like, that's enough. And then another thing I did was like, I was starting to like look for like Facebook groups about like bipolar, but sometimes with the reason why you're bipolar is like you have a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And for me, what I was finding was a lot of those groups, people were tending to talk a lot about their downs and a lot about the depression and stuff. And so it was very difficult for me to want to participate in those groups, because for me, my bipolar shows up as being actually more manic. So I'm normally very like fast talking, fast, wanting to juggle multiple things at once, wanting to think like I can do everything. And for capitalism, they love that. But but as a mother, like I got incredibly burnt out and I didn't sleep for 3 days and my brain snapped. And that's when I had my mental incident. Um, and so didn't really find like solace or whatever for me personally in the Facebook group. And I'm not saying that those groups are bad, but just for me, like it was interesting. Like I didn't find much comfort there. Instead, I found more comfort in hearing other people's stories, like toys of like other people who have quirky, interesting illnesses, that I was like, oh, okay, like I'm not alone in this like weird experience of having to like play both roles of like, still being a professional, needing to provide for my family, but then also like sorting and navigating. And like finally, the first time I ever like spoke out loud to complete strangers and told them I was bipolar was like on Clubhouse. And like Clubhouse was like a thing that like a lot of people used during the pandemic, where we were like talking to each other over audio, and you would like go into a room and like share stories and stuff. And so that was kind of like my first like coming out of the closet moment. But then I would say my second big coming out of the closet moment was doing this Kickstarter campaign, because a lot of people, that was like their very first time hearing the fact that I was bipolar. So I took a big leap of faith.
Ooh. I had I had well, and we talked about, so I had a name for this, right?
Yeah.
I was, and y'all, I'm 46 years old. So when I was 12, I was having mega issues with OCD. And so I went to a psychiatrist, and back then it was not very common for someone to diagnose OCD properly. So, but he did. However, I had OCD around the medication and things. And so I did not want to take medication. So this guy would not treat me at all without meds. And then from that time until I was 41, I did not find good therapy. And I only found good therapy when at like 40, I had a breakdown. I had OCD had been a little bit quiet and a little bit more manageable, but then it started ramping up and ramping up. And I had a break. Like I hit the deck, and it was, even though I knew what it was still so shocking and jarring, because I'm like, wait, what is happening? And then panic attacks happened, and I never knew what those were really. And it just was it was so crazy. And then when I had to, back off and get on waiting lists for the right treatment, I was a vice president of a company, and I had to share this with my boss, who was very kind, but literally had no inkling of an idea at all, that I had been white knuckling my way through this thing for so long. And I mean, and that's what I did. It was exhausting. And when you are dealing with a mental illness and you're hiding it from everybody, and, people, you sometimes feel like you have to hide it because people don't get it. They think, like it's not like you broke your arm and everyone can see that you broke your arm, but but nobody can see that there are, demons running around inside your brain that you're trying to keep at bay and not do crazy things. And it's just so difficult. And then you and I both had the added element of, let's just throw motherhood into the middle of that, because that doesn't make it any, easier. And there were so many times where when my OCD was so bad that I was doing compulsions that people could see, and getting pity looks at the grocery store and some scared looks at the grocery store, where I'm going, oh my gosh, if one of my children's friends see this or learn about this, then that could impact their lives, where, they're afraid to let their kids play with my kids because they think I'm crazy. Even though it's kind of funny, with OCD, they're way safer with me than with other people. I'm not going to let anything happen. But it was, that it just got to where it was so nuts, and trying to juggle all those things, it's so hard. It's, you worry about, in addition to trying to heal yourself, you're also worried about how this is impacting all the people around you. And it makes it really hard. And I think more of us that share our story, like you said, listening to your story, and all our other friends in our group, even though it wasn't the same thing, it was like, okay, but there's so many similar things when you're dealing with a mental illness or an addiction or anything like that, where you're like this silent thing that you're so ashamed of, but you're also battling it all the time. And it's really, really hard.
Yeah, for me, I think I really resonate with the fact that your boss at the time was very kind to you, but you were scared. And so I had just been hired by a brand new company, and my manager, who didn't know me at all, in the sense of like, I mean, she knew me because she interviewed me. And then, like, my second week on the job, I'm out of the job for a week because I have a mental illness, and I'm literally hospitalized in the emergency room, in a hospital, in the mental ward. And then I got transferred to an institution. And I remember calling her when I was institutionalized and telling her, like, oh, I'll be back at work like next week. I just like thinking, like, I'll be back. Like, I just don't know when. I'm trying to get out. And she was so kind. She never once was like, oh, well, you need to tell me every single detail of every single thing of what happened to you. Like, she respected my privacy. Um, and then later on, when it was court ordered that I had to go to therapy, I wanted to go to therapy myself. But then it also became court or like mandated that I go to therapy. And so I had to attend therapy every week in the middle of the week. And that was never an issue for her. Like she never was like, oh, where are you during this private meeting? Like I need you available. And like just the grace like was huge. And then the other thing too was when I did get charged because of the mental incident episode, I also had to attend pretrial. And so I think I was really blessed that I worked in tech because that allowed me to work remotely and to be able to attend pretrial, which is this where you have to go and pee in a cup and tell the caseworker that you're following the rules, you're going to therapy, you're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing. But once again, like you have to miss work to attend these meetings. And I just felt incredibly fortunate that she didn't hold that over me or would never questioned me as to like where I was or what I was. She trusted me. And it was a very sad day for me when she left the company because then I had to like figure out with my new manager. I was like, am I going to tell her or am I not going to tell her? And like, how am I going to like navigate this and still rise up in my career? Because you don't want to give too many excuses of being out of work. But then at the same time, too, you understand that like if you don't show up for these things, the consequences are huge for your family, for your finances, for your life, for everything. So I think, yeah, a lot of people don't understand just how much struggle there is like on multiple levels and fronts, and for me, my court case, I'm happy to say that my charges have been dropped now. And like, that's the good news. Like, but there are people that their charges never got dropped, or there are people that are still in prison because of their mental illness, because they might not have had a good lawyer to represent them, or they might be on the wrong meds. And I'm like completely aware of the privilege that I have, that I do have a strong therapist. I do have amazing psychiatrist. I have an amazing team surrounding me and an amazing lawyer. But like just me coming out with this story, I want to change like people's perspective in the sense of like sometimes when we hear like something bad happens and they're like, oh, the criminal pled like insanity. Like that's not an easy thing to get that type of plea. The individual actually has to go through an evaluation to even like be able to make that type of plea. And so for me, I was given that evaluation, and I was able to plead insanity. However, because of Montgomery County's laws, me and my lawyer, we decided not to plead insanity, because if we plead insanity and we were found guilty, the consequences for me were actually worse than if I was found guilty as a criminal. And then being labeled as insanity would be on my record for life.
Wow. That's
So
some other whole level of like it just shows you how broken things are in our system, and how, I mean, that I know how hard that was for you. I can't say that I understand it, but I know how hard that must have been to make that decision. And like, that's a big hurdle. And
then what was wild was like my friend Daria, who did have bipolar and who also had a run-in with the court and with the system. For her, with Virginia, the laws were completely different.
Wow.
And so it's just like, it's wild to me, when we say like we're like the United States, because it's like, yeah, but some things aren't united, like how we feel about like abortion, or how we feel about like children's literature, it's different state to state.
That children's literature, my goodness. So I want to talk about some of the happy stuff too, because I want to share with everybody that although we both went through these dark times, and you're never, and the name of this podcast is Out of OCD because that's the name of my book. And quite frankly, I thought it was cute and I got the URL. So guys, that's why. but as I've shared before and even talked with my therapist about, like, you never actually get out of OCD, you get through it, and you get
Mm,
to a point where you know maybe are fully recovered, but you still, with any mental illness, you still have, it doesn't like go out your ear and go away. I mean, it would be awesome if it could. I mean, there were many times when I was hoping for a lobotomy. Um, and I am being funny about that, but also not funny, because there were times when I was like, just please take this part of my brain away, even if it takes me down IQ points or whatever. But I am at a good place where I can get dressed in the morning and get out my door without repeating 100 times. And Marie Claire's in a good place, and balancing with meds and things. And so when you get to that spot, you still have to be super vigilant about, for me, I don't, it's doing my exposure and response prevention, or ERP, which is the gold standard for OCD. But it's also doing things that are good for my self-care. And both you and I, as busy, probably both type A, go, 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 go until you fall flat on your face, which is what we both did. um, it's, you have to stop and do the things that are good for your self-care. For instance, what we're doing right now, we have been putting, well, me more than Marie Claire, I've been putting it off because this is a hard thing for me to do. But let's talk about some of the things, because you were doing some really creative stuff in terms of self-care. I am actually not doing as much. I am getting massages sort of on a regular basis. But I do make sure that I do workouts. And because, as I shared, I'm 46, so my body doesn't do what it used to do. So I'm doing ballet workouts, which I thought I would never do. I'm the cardio queen, so that's hard to slow down. But yeah, I'd love for you to share some of the cool things that you're doing to help with your self-care, and what that experience is like, because I want to do some of them.
yeah. Before I dive into like my long menu list of like healing strategies, also you got to give yourself credit. Like you have a really beautiful community that you have, with your friends and your family. You have a support. You have like you're not too far from nature, so I know you spend a lot of time like having fires and going on walks in the woods. And then you also just recently got a puppy, right? And that's part of like the self-care too, is like having a little fuzzy friend.
Oh, a puppy. I was like, oh, I thought you said a bug bee. I was like, what did I get? Yes. Well, yes. So Fuzzy Friend is, I've never had a dog, and fuzzy friends are wonderful, but they are also a lot of work. So yeah, you got to balance that. He's not a calm dog. I would love to. I have a friend who we borrowed her dog, sort of for a little bit of time to test out, because I have two boys, to test out with boys and dogs. And this was like, this dog wasn't a therapy dog, but he could have easily been a therapy dog. And then we got a husky. So it's a totally different experience, but he is super snuggly.
Yeah, I think they say there's something about the like the heartbeat of animals matching like your own heartbeat to like lower the anxiety. I think there's like some study out there like that talks about that.
I'm
But
sure I
for
didn't
me,
for the boys.
the foundation was definitely therapy. And so I've gone through multiple therapists. I have a trauma therapist, a cognitive behavioral therapist, and a dance and motion therapist, as well as my psychiatrist. I went to the Amen Clinic where I had my brain scanned. It is not a cheap procedure. I am aware of this. However, they had a payment plan, which was very nice. And when I had my brain scanned And I went through all of this test. The Amen Clinic really cares about like holistic healing approach. And so thankfully, knock on wood, I've always been on the same medication since. And that's just been a big blessing because I know that with other issues that I've dealt with in my health before, sometimes getting on the correct medication is like trial and error and you feel like a guinea pig. And that's just not a fun feeling. So I've experienced both before. And I'm thankful that at least with my mental illness, I've been on the same meds this entire time. Now, sometimes it's gone up in dosage or down in dosage, but it's the same med. And that's been very comforting for me. So that's my baseline. Now, what do I do on top of that? Toy knows I'm incredibly, I like to say, like, I'm aggressive about being happy. And so for me, like, yeah, apart from like massage and acupuncture, I also do like qigong. I love spending time out in nature. I've but I've done some other like interesting things. So like I've gotten a colonic like multiple times, and that's literally when you have like water. This might be a little bit graphic, warning, trigger warning, but you literally and this is like some ancient practice, which is really interesting. But it's like been modernized, and so it's like you have this machine that you hook up to, and like the practitioner helps you like get on the machine, and the machine like squirts water up your butt. And then you release, and it feels like you're pooping for like 45 minutes, and it's the weirdest feeling in the world, but I swear to God, it is so healing if you are literally able to let go. And by letting go, I remember one time I did it, I was like crying, like, and I was like, I don't understand why I'm crying. And the practitioner was like, you're having an emotional release. And I was like, yeah, like the things that no longer serve me, I'm letting go of. And it's just like amazing, like how much stuff you could be holding on to that's like actually poisonous for you or not good for you. So just to like let the water up there and do its thing and then let it out.
I was in a group one time. It was like a workout group for a hot minute, but that was one of their suggestions was to go do that because it same thing. But I'm not brave enough. I might, but I have had a colonoscopy, so maybe that's probably harder.
Yeah, not too far from it. And then it's like a self-induced longer colonoscopy. Another
It's
thing,
probably a nicer setting than
such a nicer setting by far. And at the end of the day, you can control like the pressure and stuff. But another thing I've done is this really interesting, they're called like alchemized paintings, where this practitioner, her name is Yabette, I talked to her for like an hour. And while I'm talking to her about whatever I'm going through, whether it's trauma, drama, milestone. So for example, this week, 2 years ago, my mom passed, and I talked to her about it. And she came up with the most beautiful painting. It was kind of creepy and magical. Well, I was telling her about my mom passing and losing my mom and the drama and the ups and downs about it. She was painting. I don't see what the painting is until the very end. She told me, she was like, I'm painting this flower. I don't know the name of it. And when she turned the painting around, the painting literally was my mother's favorite flower. And I just like started screaming. I was like, that's the bird of paradise. That's my mom's favorite flower. And the title of the painting was called Remember the Beauty. And she was like, as long as you remember the beauty of your mom, you'll be fine. And so I like threw a memorial service about my mom, and I titled it Remember the Beauty. And like even just this morning, I was like, I put a post called Remember the Beauty, but it was because of this painting. And so I've done this painting thing with her a couple of times now. The first time I did it was when I was in the midst of court, in the midst of family drama, in the midst of fighting with my ex-husband, in the midst of being unsure about the state of me with my son. And she came up with this painting of like this hurricane, and there was like an eye. It looked like a tornado. And she called it the calm eye of the storm. And she was like, you're the eye. Even though there's a storm swelling around you and everything's chaotic and a mess, she was like, you're the eye, and there's stillness in the eye and hope in the eye. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I need this painting. And I like held on to this painting, and it just was like this vehicle that like I had something physical. So I like put it on my like laptop. I put it on my phone cover. I like bought the painting. I hung it up on the wall, and just to like remind myself, because it's like for me it's like affirmations are incredible and powerful, but also to have a painting matched with the affirmation was really cool. So we'll put her website in the show notes.
Yeah, that is cool. Because like that, because you go to, like, you came up here, we went to the art gallery. We go to art galleries and things like that, and you just like kind of wander around and you find things. And I can never afford to buy something. I'm like, my husband loses his mind if I spent $500 on a painting. But you see stuff and you're like, oh, that is so cool. That speaks to me for some strange reason, and I don't know why. But to have that very personal connection with that, oh my gosh, I'd have that art all over my house. Now I wrote it down. That's what I said.
Yes.
That sounds like a fun thing to do.
It's really funny because she's like, you're one of like, you're in the group of like collectors now with my art. Because I like got like my fiance to do a painting with her. I've recommended other friends to do paintings with her. So, and there's something about the paintings, like after you see it, it just like pivots, like it changes your perspective and your trajectory on things. Like I say in my book, it was like I was summarizing months worth of therapy into this one painting. And it just like, I was speaking with a complete stranger at the time. Like, I'm like, I don't know her, but I trusted the process. And I'm so thankful I did, because I had this like anchor to like help push me through to the next level until I needed another painting. But that was my choice to have another painting too.
I've never heard of that before. I kind of thought you were going to tell me that you were painting while talking, because I don't know what it is about. You ever get like a paint by number or a puzzle or something, and you're doing it with somebody else, but you're having this deep conversation, and it's almost because you're doing the other thing, you're not, holding back anything. You're just like, yeah, I went and I got a colonic, and then I did this.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we all used to do back in the day when we were like gathering berries, like, in the forest, or like cooking in the kitchen. The whole village of women would come and we'd be cooking together, like, and just like shooting the shit, or like having coffee ceremonies, or like, this is why people love like, yeah, just gathering around liquids, whether it's like alcohol or like tea ceremonies, like I think there's
tickled me,
just like
around liquid.
we gather around liquids.
That's funny. I never really put that into like a category.
Yeah, think about it. Tea ceremony, coffee ceremony, bars. Like even now they have like like alcohol-free cocktail hours, like, but people gather around drinks and let stuff flow.
What a metaphor. Oh my God.
I know, I'm in metaphor land right now.
And all of those things and I was sharing, and you're right, I should have recorded it. I didn't push record. At the beginning, I was sharing with Maria Claire that we had planned to do this today. and I've started doing meditation, which I will talk all about in another episode, but it's with OCD, and you've got these, crazy squirrels running around in your brain all the time. I thought I could never do it. And I ran across a guy who I took his online course, and it was wonderful. Just a really interesting take on meditation. But anyway, part of this meditation is you do it, and it is hard, and then you rest. And so while I was resting, I fell asleep and woke up 5 minutes before the podcast.
That's a blessing. That's the best sleep.
It was wonderful, but I was like, wow, I forgot to set the timer for the rest. the rest. So it was really restful rest. But yeah, so that's another practice that is challenging, but it's one of the things that I do to help keep going and staying better and staying on top of the mental illness, because it is easy to slip back into it. I mean, you have to be vigilant all the time and always think about that. And
For me, the number one thing is sleep. So that gets into rest, and just to not feel bad about taking naps anymore, or not feel, and also sometimes if the spark of creativity comes and I'm like, or like I wake up in the middle of the night and then it's like, you have to be like vigilant to be like, don't check your phone, or like, I used to have a very difficult time going to bed, and I used to wake up and have a difficult time going back to bed. So having just healthy sleep habits, healthy sleep, they call it like sleep hygiene or whatever. Like, so little things like not drinking a lot of liquids before you go to sleep, so you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night. Just like basics. And you're like, oh wait, mind blowing. If I don't have a big cup of water before I go to bed, then I'm not going to have to wake up in the middle of the night. And then I might be able to actually sleep through the night. But then also, I mean, so for me, going back to like what you said with meditation, what's nice is like there's actually sleep meditation and sleep music. And so it's like sometimes you could listen to like a guided meditation about sleep, or listen to like music about sleep. For me, I had my mental health episode because I hadn't slept for 3 days straight. And so for me, like one of the number one most important things is sleep. And I have like lavender that I can spray. I have like lavender that I can smell. I have some people are like, oh, drink chamomile tea. I don't really like the taste of chamomile tea, but there are other things that I do for my sleep, like taking like nice warm Epsom salt baths that have like the Dr. Teal, and this is not sponsored.
yeah. But if you want to, Dr. Teal, I'd use your Epsom salts too.
Yes, he makes a good Epsom salt sleep,
Yes.
like relax and just like take a bath. Don't fall asleep in the bath, but get out of the bath and then just curl up in the bed. And then also just having like, I don't know, get a heavy blanket or get some white noise, like the little fans going. There's just different things you can do to like make your sleep a little bit more comfy. So I actually like created my bedroom to be like a spa now at this point, because I just like love sleep and need sleep and want to make sleep a happy place.
I love that. And it is so important. And I had so much insomnia my whole life. My 2 babies kind of cured that for the most part. Right to sleep. But I still do struggle with it, and the getting up and stuff. But I love that you mentioned the bath, because there is a weird relationship that I have had with baths. I never wanted to take the time, and it doesn't take that long, right? It's like maybe 20, 30 minutes, but I never wanted to take the time. I was like, oh, I don't have time to just, I'm just gonna lounge around in a bath. Like, what am I, some kind of princess,
You are a princess.
I know, but it was one of those things that I just didn't do. And the funniest part about it, I've moved into the house where I live like 13 years ago. And one of the biggest sellers was this obnoxious bathtub. I've never had an obnoxious bathtub. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take baths. And then I don't think I got in that thing for 5 years or more. I mean, my kids loved it. They had a swimming pool when they were babies, but awesome. But it's just funny. And I try to like at least try to do that maybe once a week now, if I remember to just like stop, and because it really does help. You just chill out, and it's just another self. Anything you can do, folks, that will help you just enjoy things. I love that you said you're aggressively happy, because I think more people need to do that, especially when you have the kind of mental things going on, no matter what it is. a lot of times, at least for me, I wouldn't really think I deserved stuff like that. It was weird. I was self-sabotaging, but not even really knowing it. Like, oh, who am I to take half a day and go on a walk in the woods? Who am I? Like, I have to do my work. I have all these things. And the truth of it is that when you do those things, you get more shit done in less time. Like, before, I would spend an entire day obsessing about, and not obsessing like the mental illness obsessing, but just, doing a grant or doing something, I would be stressed out. And now I can do it. And not just because of AI. Now I can do it in so much less time because I give myself time to do those things that make me feel good. And then my productivity goes up when I need to be productive.
Yeah.
And so I have several people that are close to me, like my family, that are, my mom's like, that's amazing. How did you get that done? Because she knows that I had like a deadline. I'm like, I don't know. But I took a bath, it's
Yeah.
amazing how just, we hear self-care now more than we used to. I've never heard the term until I was probably in my 30s. And I kind of thought it was silly at the time because it was like, self-care, like, what are you, just lazy? No, it's really a thing, and it's really important to give yourself, like you said, that grace and space to do it. And it will help. I mean, it helps you calm down. It helps you get unstuck. For me, um, with OCD, I would get stuck in a do loop, as they used to call it in the old computer science days. You have that kind of background. But I'd be stuck in this loop and just stop, get off the roller coaster for a minute. And then when you get back on, you're going to be much better off. So that's
Yeah. And I want to add one other thing to that because my book literally is like, it's like a mix between like the juicy drama, trauma, but then also the healing and like comfort. And it is this like fun roller coaster. So in between what we've talked about, the diagnosis and then the self-care, I think the other thing that was like paramount for me was, I don't know, I'm gonna call it like community care. And I think just like having a family for me, like so an adopted family, like people who I would consider like my aunties or aunties for my son or
I'm Auntie Toy, by the way.
hint, hint. And so just being able to have people in my life to allow me, and when I say to allow me to take a bath or allow me to take a nap, what I mean is at the end of the day, because we are mothers, somebody has to watch the baby. Like it does take a village to raise a child. And so for a mother to be able to have a night out or to even just have an hour to go for a walk or whatever and to step away and be like, it's okay, the baby's going to be okay, or the house is going to be okay. You need to have community, whether it's a partner or a husband or a neighbor or a community that you create. And so for me, that was just like paramount to be able to like create that and form that and have that. And I think that's like, I mean, and then that also is what helped us write our book as well. And um that's been, I feel like it's that's been the journey for me. It's like all three things. It's like one, figuring out what is this diagnosis, two, being really aggressive about my happiness, and then three is just being okay, leaning on my community, asking my community for like admitting I need help. Because going back to like what Toy says of that, like type A personality, like I'm good, I can do this myself. I got this. I'm used to juggling 100 things. Like that's how I got burnt out.
Yeah.
And so just to be able to have people around you that you trust, be like, can you watch Malik right now? Can you hey, I need to take like this time to do this thing. Currently, I'm recording my audiobook. So it takes 2 hours for me to be in the studio. Somebody's watching the leak while I'm in that studio. Like that's huge.
I'm so glad you said that, because that is so, so true. And with mental illnesses, we isolate ourselves. I mean, even people that aren't running around like I can do it all, it it's very isolating to have a mental illness, because you don't know who you can share it with. And if you're gonna get close to people, even if it's not about your mental illness, just getting close to people can sometimes really be hard. And it probably started with the book, or me being a whole lot more intentional about who I spend my time with, as I don't want to spend time with, those shallow relationships where you can't say, holy crap, I'm having a really bad day. I really need some help. I need to just get this off my chest, and you don't have to worry about being vulnerable. And it's
Right.
it's not easy to curate that kind of community. I love that you said family. It's so, but it is that, I'm glad you mentioned it. It's so important that people are thinking about that, and you build much deeper, more important relationships too when you can be that way with other people, and you can lean on each other, and then they're going to have a crisis too and they can lean on you, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like when you're saying that, the thing that comes to mind is like, it's like you take that moment to be honest with yourself first about like what it is that's happening within me. And then you take a moment to like be like, all right, well, what am I going to do about it? But then at the same time, too, you're like, you get to a certain point where you're like, there's only so much you can do by yourself, that you have to lean on other people. And I think in our like American capitalist, individualist, and so many other countries, the collective, the community, the village, like this is just normal. Everybody's gonna be like all up in your business. Hey, what's going on with you? Hey, why didn't I see you at the function the other day? Like, hey, I haven't seen you walk out of your house in like 3 days. What's going on? Like, versus here, people go MIA and people don't check on each other. And so I would say, like, exactly like what you said, it goes both ways. It's not only you telling your friends, hey, I got this issue, but then it's also you being there for your friends too when they are going through stuff, or checking up on them and being like, you good? Like everything chill, And it's just that accountability. It's just that, yeah, it's just that community building.
Yep, that's so true. Yeah, like now if somebody comes to your door and like knocks on the door, or the phone, like your phone rings, they're like diving under desks, like what's happening? Like what, is it?
What are they trying to sell me?
It's just like your mom checking up on you, like, oh, I was worried. It's funny that we do that now, but we totally do.
Yeah, but it didn't used to be that way. People used to invite strangers into their house, or used to, I mean, there was only one phone and when it was connected to the wall, and only the people who knew you knew that number.
Right? That was like, and my family was so funny because we would always like not it and dive under chairs and things, like I'm not answering the phone.
Oh, I was the opposite. I was like on the phone all evening long, and everybody was like, are we getting any other calls? Because you've been like monopolizing the phone this entire time. And I'm like, oops, definitely didn't click call over.
I just like then cell phones came, and like one day like one person had a cell phone, and then 2 days later a whole world had cell phones.
Yeah, and now some people can't get, well, not some people, a lot of us can't get off the cell phones. It's wild.
I always have it, even though it's crazy. But we gotta end this at some point, so but we'll do it again. But I'm just so excited to launch this and do it with such a dear friend, because it's very dear and true to my heart that I want to do more in mental health and be more of an advocate for people just being okay with it, and having people get out of it. And it's really, really hard. And we're seeing such a crisis now. So I'm so glad that you shared this with me, Marie Claire, and all the things we talked about, y'all, will be in the show notes.
In the notes.
Show notes. And we might, if I don't cringe when I watch this, I don't like looking at my face. I will put it on the YouTube too. So I'm kind of doing both things. I think with this show, there'll be a lot of just the podcast, but I will also put those on YouTube. I just found out that's a thing people are doing. So it'll be in 2 locations. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for creating this platform, and I'm really excited to hear the future stories. And I mean, this is the good stuff, is the process. And yeah, to be continued. Thank you for everybody who's listened to it this far and made it through all of our shenanigans.
Yes, thank you, friends. And probably the rest of them won't be this long, but we love you and we'll catch you on the next one.
Or maybe it will be this long. Bye.